I would like to welcome all of you to US History 101. This is not the US History 101. This is not the US History class that you took in high school. This is a very different approach. I will confess that not only was I bored with taking US History when I was a high school student, I was bored with it when I taught it on a high school level as a long-term sub several different times. And I think I failed at really being that great of an instructor with US History 101. And, you know, my specialty is Asia and the Islamic world. So when I was offered this class several years ago, I was a little disappointed. But I decided to kind of regroup and I started talking to other professors who taught U.S. History 101 and used many different approaches. And bam! I just fell in love with it. This is one of my favorite classes to teach is U.S. History 101. And I think why it became so enjoyable to me, and I mean U.S. history, to kind of actually fall in love with the history of my own country this late in life as a professor. What happened is that I just realized that it's so much more complicated and interesting than the way that the approach is with the school textbook for several reasons. One, you're required to memorize all these things called facts, like a math equation. So A, B, C, or D answer, and you have things like, well, how angry were the colonists, and you can have an anger meter or something like that. There's games like that in high school, drawing posters, blah blah blah. And I don't want to diss on those approaches that sometimes high school teachers take. That's recommended in your training. It just didn't work for me. That's all I'm saying. Okay. And also, a lot of times, there's a lot of professors will focus on battles. Now, this is a preference. This is not a bad thing, and I want to make this very clear. Many history instructors are also coaches, and the kind of football game and approach goes into teaching history. How the teams won, certain important battles and the rush of the fight, kind of going in. And this appeals to certain groups of students, and then it loses many others. Now, again, I'm not saying that that's not important, and I will confess that that's a weakness of mine. But it's also not an interest of mine when it comes to my priorities of what I'm doing with U.S. history. The United States is a really young country, and we fought a revolution. Some people don't even call it a revolution. There's a debate if it even is worthy of being called a revolution. This might shock some of us. There are so many different approaches to, and we'll explain that later as I go into discussion. How is it that we talk so much about liberty and had slaves? What do we do with the whole legacy of white settlement and the Native American population, the Mexican-American War? How do you approach this honestly and not, glorify in U.S. history at the expense of others, or completely kind of become an intellectual flag burner and say, oh, certain realities I can't handle, and then I take my approach of my country in a very negative way. I'm not trying to promote negativity or positivity. I'm trying to approach different ideas of reality and the variations and the nuance of historical developments within this very short time frame of history of an area we call the United States now of America. Okay, so I want you to know that most students, and I think it's fair to say this, have enjoyed my classes, this one in particular, regardless of whether or not they're a liberal or a conservative. And I've had many conservative students. Many in the military or retired, many different minorities, and so forth. Now, having said that, we can see great discussions take place in the work that we do. But what we need to balance is freedom of speech and just respectability towards fellow students. I can't have. I think it's important to see serious debates take place, especially because what is going on right now in modern American society and the tensions that we see going on in our society are rooted in this time period. But I'm going to have some of my students that are studying to be police officers. I have family members that are. I'm going to have African American students, Latino. I'm going to have Muslim, and I'm going to have gay, transgender, women. Again, a whole spectrum of politics. And we all have to at least respect that aspect of each other. So we can have our own beliefs and bring those into the discussions, and they will enrich them, but again, with respect and dignity for the other students, okay? And I will write to you politely if I'm concerned about anything written. I've had to do that a little bit, but surprisingly, I'm very happy to say I have not needed to do that much. Now, the textbooks, yours may not look like this picture because I have like a volume 1 and 2, Visions of America. This is recommended. This is an outline of where I base my lectures on. Okay, some of you may want to read a lot of it and some not. I don't cover everything, and so I just want you to know that. And so if you have questions on any points that are in the text, in the chapters, or other aspects of U.S. history that I'm not going to have time to get to, important characters that I will not be able to discuss, maybe like Benedict Arnold, which I'd like to talk about more, or some other characters that, due to time constraints, I'm not going to talk about that much or at all. I can do that though if you ask me. Okay. Now, our main discussion book will be this one, The People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. I want you to know that most of my students love this as a discussion book, but it is biased. And I had a professor in grad school. She was a very conservative professor, and she hated this book. I think it's fair to say she hated it. She said, this is the Hate America book. Okay, now listen, I don't think that that's a fair assessment of this. But what I want to draw attention to is what Howard Zinn does is that he challenges preconceived notions that are standard to the way that we think about characters like Columbus and Jefferson and so forth. Now, I've looked for other books that are maybe not so to the left that people might think are less biased, but I just haven't found a great equivalent to it. And my conservative students, I think, have enjoyed at least what he brings up, and in terms of the ability to have a debate or a discussion about. Okay, so give it a chance and take a look. Again, I'm not asking you to buy into it. I'm asking you to engage with this book. Okay, now there was a conservative historian who put a Patriot's History of the United States together as a kind of response to this one. I bought it and I was disappointed in the sense that he just doesn't do the same format. This isn't really the equivalent book to this, because it doesn't create the discussions in the way that this one does. But feel free to buy this and look over it if you want to incorporate something that you think might counterbalance this book if you have an issue. Okay, so I think you can get a lot of these for relatively cheap. Okay, so this is Larry Schweikart and Michael Allen. Okay, a Patriot's History of the United States in response to people's history. Okay, and last but not least, I have Defending Slavery. And this book is really shocking. Short book, powerful book. This book is the direct text of Southern intellects making a defense of slavery, from Baptist ministers to vice presidents and senators. Thomas Jefferson's defense of slavery. And we'll have a discussion with this when we get to the Civil War after we've kind of went over this. Okay? And again, these are all set for discussion. Okay? How to get around on Canvas, I'm going to have in the other video. This is my first time using Canvas. And so hopefully this will work out great for all of you. And I've tried to make this as easy and accessible as possible. So always call me. I'm a very busy person, or email me or text me. This week in particular, I'm going to be more busy than usual on this first week, and then it's going to be much better on the next week. But I really pride myself on being accessible. And if you can't get a hold of me and I don't return a call, that usually is not because I'm ignoring you, but I will take it in consideration if you have a time constraint and you need, for an assignment or so forth. So the key to working with me in my class is communication. Okay, you communicate with me, I communicate with you, and then we work out things that we need to. Okay, so last thing, I'm a single father. I've been a single father for a long time. I work 2 jobs. I know that most of my students are going through the same kind of struggles. So I'm very sympathetic to the workloads you are dealing with. Again, communicate with me. I am your ally as well as your professor to help you graduate, succeed, and get a very good education. So, having said that, let us begin. Thanks a lot.